I want to welcome everybody to our 13th Art Forum. Peter Anderson and I, we started this little series a little over a year ago, and we've had some wonderful artists talking to us about their creative process. This morning, we have Anne Lambert with us. She's a very busy person, but she graciously made time to join us this morning to talk about her work. So I'm very grateful to her for that. And for those of you who've not been on the Art Forum before, basically we created this just to create a more meaningful conversation about art. Excuse me. And just so we can have more personal interaction with other artists. So I really appreciate all of you joining us. So now I'm just going to turn it over to Anne. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you so much, Alan. Oh, this is such an honor to be with all of you. I'm greeting you from directly from my atelier in Regina, Saskatchewan. It's the middle of the prairies in Canada. And thanks to the technology, geography doesn't have any, it's not an obstacle, basically, so that we have a chance to meet today. So I'm very excited. What I'm going to propose to you this morning is I have prepared 2 short videos. One will be touring my space because I think it has a big impact on the kind of work you accomplish. The second one will explore encaustic, showing how I do my encaustic work. And the third one, these are the 2 videos, and then the third part is a PowerPoint in which I will explore more my art installations, which incorporates multimedia approaches. So very quickly, I'm from originally from Lévis, Quebec, raised and born over there for many years, and I'm established in Saskatchewan. It's been over 30 years now with my husband and 2 kids. My studies, I did study the arts. In Quebec, we have, of course, elementary, high school, and then there's what they call the cégep. So I did 2 years post-secondary in a very fascinating program, which is a hybrid combination of fine arts and literature, because I loved writing as well. And when I went to university, I ended up studying history, took drama classes as well, and ended up in journalism. So very complex kind of a path. And I did a big detour in the news business. I was a radio and television host for a while, but the bulk of my career has been as a producer, which is a very creative aspect of the field. Meaning that I've been editing sound and images, creating television series, creating creative stories. And I should mention I was working for the public broadcaster, Radio-Canada. All along of that, I was also very involved in the art scene. I belonged to a collective for 13 years that gave me deadlines and goals to achieve, because twice a year we would be showing in the 2 biggest urban centers in the province, which are Regina and Saskatoon. So that was excellent. And just because of the time constraint, stealing time in evenings and weekends and holidays and whatnot, I was called a semi-professional, not because I was not serious about the business, but I was just limited to the time I could devote to the project. Finally, a big step was getting into a commercial gallery in 2009. And then in 2014, finally, I decided that I was done with the news business and I just wanted to be full-time in the studio. And in the studio, but also I do have an art education portion of my career that's still very important. So I am sessional at the University of Regina to teach how to introduce the arts in the classroom. And I have given workshops to kids and adults alike, to artists as well, on various topics, including abstraction and comics. The kids love that one. So that's that's my resume in terms of the journey that I've been on, which is still on. And now I'd like to bring you to the studio, because I suspect a lot of you know very much what I'm going to talk about. I started on the corner of a kitchen table in the apartment. And when we moved finally to our home, I took the extra bedroom for a while. And then when we got our daughter, moved to the basement. That was a few years to set up. And then finally, I made a decision that I needed to have a sense of community, and I ended up in a cooperative, a co-op space where there were other artists. That was a fantastic time, very stimulating, great conversation, great critiques between each other, which was also a dynamic that I ended up having also with the collective when I was with my peers. But I think it's very important to have that chance of talking about the work. And finally, I feel very privileged to have this. We were able to make an addition to my home, and that's where I've been working since 2005. And that's what I want to show you with the video, because you cannot imagine large works and ambitious projects when you work out of the corner of a table in the kitchen. I think if you can devote a bigger space, and the physical space gives you mental space. Basically, that's what I wanted to share with you. And without further ado, I'd like to bring you in the setup, and you'll have a sense of my practice as well. So I'm going to share my screen. And Alan, just let me know if it's not working properly.
We're good.
I hope you didn't get too busy with this walking into the atelier. I simply wanted to give you a sense of the space before we get into the specifics of the setup. My atelier is actually attached to my home, and it is a professional autonomous space. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that my home and my professional space are located onto the Treaty 4 territory. My space is actually an addition to the house and was built in 2005. Its dimensions, 330 square feet, and it has changed a lot over the years. Nowadays, the heart of the atelier and the main piece of furniture is this central island. It has quite a special story behind it. It was designed to my very specifications and built by my late father. My dad, Jacques, was a very accomplished technician and very talented carpenter. He worked for 2 years on the project back home in Lévis, making sure the components could be shipped on a pallet to Regina, and he came here to reassemble everything by himself in the atelier.
As my dad was very ingenious, he added a second leaf that I can open so that the central island has this very wide square surface to work on. It is 68 inches wide by 72 inches long. And by the way, everything is on wheels, so it can be moved around when necessary. This is where I do work, standing up and creating works on paper or on wood panels. I draw, paint, collage, work on textiles. That island is the anchor of my creativity. Most of the time, I try to set aside a moment in my mornings to do studies. It could be a quick sketch on an iPad, but I prefer to get the gouaches or watercolors and crayons out and work on paper and just warm up to get that flow going. And often I find new ideas this way. Running water is essential in an atelier, and this sink sees a lot of action after each session of painting. Pretty happy about this one, especially because of its generous proportion, and it was found in a garage sale. It's vintage. My other gem in the atelier is this filing cabinet decommissioned from the provincial government years ago. It holds all my works on paper that is ready to join a collection online or in a gallery. My practice focuses on encaustic painting and collage, while it also incorporates printmaking, digital drawing, photography, and art installations. My visual language is abstraction. It explores the landscape motif and our complex relationship to our surroundings. This is an example of the most recent series I've been developing. It is called Impermanent Éphémère. Its starting point was a series of unknown vintage photographs from someone traveling in Europe, and the finished works are complex layers of digital and analog techniques. Another very useful feature of the atelier is its hanging wall on the southern portion of this space. It is very flexible. It allows to show works that are at various stages, being in progress or completed. To have a space where I can reflect on my artworks is very important. Some of them could hang there for weeks on while I decide if the artwork is indeed completed. This is my very recently refurbished personal art library. It contains books about the art, about artists, sketchbooks, journals, books on techniques. Basically, it is a source of information and inspiration, and it is very important in my art practice to reflect again and read material that keep me informed about how the art world is evolving. I don't have the exact count, but I think there's over 150 items, including DVDs and catalog of exhibition that I've visited over the years. Another useful and very meaningful item in the atelier is this mobile wall, designed by myself and built by my husband. One of the goals was to fit neatly in front of that huge shelving system in order to hide material that I don't use on a daily basis. and also things that are relating to other tasks accomplished in the studio. For instance, administration. And of course, its surface allows me to work vertically whenever I need to. There's a lot of tools, equipment, and material in an atelier, and storage is always at a premium. In mine, a lot of things are on wheels. Here is my drawing supplies. The cards are color coded, so the turquoise one has all the water-based medium, namely gouaches, watercolors, and some acrylics. The orange cards are dedicated to my oil paints and all of my encaustic supplies. Last but not least, the computer area. Very important because I do create digitally. It is also necessary for all administration tasks. And my social media portion of my day's work is crucial because I post every day. I'm very active on Instagram to let people know what I am up to.
And that concludes that first video. We'll stop sharing. There we go, back here. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it was fun to put together, and it was actually prepared with my iPhone. I did it all by myself. Shooting by ourselves is quite an interesting exercise. But it was on the request of my online gallery, Grasslands Gallery Online, that wanted this item to be on the website and accessible for people. So I'm just happy to have an opportunity to showcase it again. My other dirty little secret is that the studio is not big enough. So I think we all run into this. And basically, this is really the working space. And there's the basement that's been put to good use. I think I've been overtaking at least a third of the space in terms of storing both art supplies, panels that are not used yet, and also finished artworks when it's not stored at the brick and mortar gallery that's representing me in Regina. And I do have also a sewing area with sewing supplies. So all in all, I'm lucky that I have access to that big space. I do have this dream one day of maybe being in having access to a second space or the loft or something like that. But I think this is going to be my life, and that's going to be my primary space for many, many years to come. So you've noticed that encaustic takes a big portion of my practice. It is what I've been known for. This is the medium that brought me into the commercial gallery, Nouveau Gallery, in 2009. Although when people ask me, what kind of artist are you? I present myself nowadays as a multimedia artist, because there is definitely the painting and drawing, both analog and digital, but I also have art installation, which incorporates more technology, and that's what we'll talk about in the PowerPoint part. The painting, the encaustic, happened in my life, it was a big shift. For the longest time when I was belonging to the collective, actually, I was more into human figures and the political charge of the human body and the female body, especially. When I got finally my hands on knowing how to do encaustic work, it brought me also into getting interested in the landscape motif, because that, for me in Saskatchewan, I'm transplanted. It took me roughly 15 years to figure out how to incorporate that impression and that experience in my work, and that's where the landscape motif appeared, and it also coincided with the fact that I went full motion, or just about full motion abstraction. And it's that mix of symbolism and abstraction that's very much present in the encaustic, which is a medium that lends itself to that kind of approach. So this is the second little video that I have prepared for you. I'm going to make sure that this one is done, bringing up the new one. That one has some music at the very beginning, but then I will be doing the voiceover live. And again, we'll share the screen. So you've been reintroduced to the atelier, and what we're seeing right now is my precious stash of dry pigments bought at Sennelier or Kama pigment. And I do bring often dry pigments from travels, like in Italy or France, when I'm lucky enough to be able to travel. Very first aspect of encaustic is the colors. And nowadays we're lucky because there are these fantastic manufacturers like RNF, which is a big favorite, who are producing high quality medium. The colors are already prepared with pigments and the medium, the encaustic medium. Kama Pigments is a Canadian company based in Montreal. There's also Encausticos that I use because they have a beautiful palette. The wax medium is the foundation for encaustic, and the ingredients is beeswax, and the other big ingredients is what we're seeing right now, the damar resin, which is dried sap. The labor-intense kind of process, but it's fun to prepare our own recipe to have the choice of beeswax that's not bleached. That's an example of natural beeswax. There's also beeswax that comes into little pellets. You can see that's the paler yellow. It's been cleaned. And there's also the very refined pharmaceutical quality level bleach beeswax. We'll see now 3 different methods that I use to create my personal palette in encaustic. The first one is using the dry pigments that go straight into a mixture of the Dama resin and the beeswax that have been prepared beforehand. And now it's just melted onto a grill at a temperature of about 200 degree. Is it Fahrenheit? Yeah, Fahrenheit. So that's one way that color would be very translucent. So the second method is, again, the medium. Like I said, it's the fundamental. And then I can mix oil paint that I've rested on a piece of absorbing paper so that the excess oil is taken away. And then I can mix the color. And as you can see, this color will be more opaque because I use some maple, Russell maple color and maple yellow. Both very opaque colors. And the third method, here I'm just adding some of the RNF medium. It's already, you can buy it already. And I use their pigment sticks. You can use oil sticks depending on the brands, but these ones are just fabulous. They're drawing, as you know, they're drawing tools as well. And they have this lipstick consistency that is just so luscious to use straight on the canvas, but they have a beautiful concentration of colors, of pigmentation. And again, they're beautiful to develop colors for the painting process. The tools, that also is a matter of personality, I believe, how you approach the medium. Silicone tools are very much useful. They can come from the kitchen as much as a specialized store. Natural brushes with natural bristle that can bear the heat, and then the metallic tools that are I use a lot. We'll move to the work on paper because it's a very important portion of my practice. They're basically monotypes on paper that will end up being collaged onto panels and create various work. Here you see me with a portfolio of older drawings and monotypes that have been fused with the encaustic medium, and that will be used in collages. And just like a lot of us, of yourselves, I'm sure, stash of small pieces as much as very large pieces. I have stash everywhere. This is a fantastic tool developed by the artist Paula Rowland. It's the hot box. It's a fantastic tool to create these monotypes with encaustic. You'll see the process. You need about 150 degree Fahrenheit to just have a gentle heat to melt the wax. First here is me using, taking a regular drawing on a very thin paper and fusing it with the medium so that it becomes translucent. This is like magic. I love that process. And then we'll see again the hot box in the context of doing more what I call the monotypes. Here I'm using these bricks from our RNF straight onto the plate. There's also a little crayon from Kama Pigments. Loving the shape of them to work with. You can go into a little bit more detail, but of course, for this demonstration, I was just aiming at creating various motifs. I took an intermediary. Sorry, some words are tougher for me. With Paula Rowland, which was fantastic. I highly recommend it. Showing the paper that I use, it's either the Kozo paper or Shujigami papers that I use. They're very absorbent, and they too become translucent once they're entirely fused with an encaustic medium. And there are archival. That's also a very important aspect I take into consideration anyway. So that's one example of a monotype, and then I can keep adding to this. One of the silicone, this is from Catalyst. Yeah. Again, printing. I normally do hours of these kind of sessions, maybe 2, 3, 4 hours in a row, so that I have quantity that, and then I select the more interesting ones. I tend to keep a lot of them just in case. And this is finished work on paper, combining assemblage and the encaustic monotypes, but also drawings that have been fused with the encaustic. We've seen the wall in the previous video. That's where I tend to have a chance to think about how the work is going. So the work on panel, this is a series. I call it an open series. I've been developing this one that's called Homeland for the last 15 years, basically. It's always evolving. We've just seen the ventilation system, very crucial, because even beeswax without any mixture in it emanates toxic fumes. So it's very, very important to have proper circulation. And I know by experience I need 15 degrees Celsius outdoor so that I can have a breeze that is not too cold into the studio. So being in Canada, it means, for me anyway, the way I like my setup, I don't do encaustic. I do encaustic just between roughly the end of March until, when I'm lucky, the beginning of October. So that panel, I had been languishing for about a year, and I decided to go back at it to readjust some of the portion. The structure of the composition is very much referencing the landscape, but what I'm interested in the landscape is landscape that's been transformed by the presence of human activity. And Saskatchewan is very much marked by its agricultural story. So it's definitely part of what I'm putting down into the vision of this series. So, and that's the other beauty with encaustic. It's a very forgiving kind of medium. Like I said, I didn't touch the work for a year, and then I can just read everything, sorry, and go back to it. Here I can work with the brush, always fusing layers. It's always very important. Each time you apply a layer, it needs to be reheated so that it's absorbed by the surface. And that's one of the monotypes that I'm using in this situation. Now it's being fused to the panel. My trusty little blade, taking away the excess material. I definitely enjoy the meditative aspect of this medium. Here's a close-up of what it does to paper when it's fused with encaustic. and working with the metallic tools, which is my preferred tool. Usually I work with the spatulas and the painting knives quite a lot. Of course, because it resists so well with the heat, and because I tend to apply my encaustic in a very thin way. I'm not doing the dripping approach at all. Another perspective on the ventilation system. That brings me to talking about the personal palette. One other element that's very predominant is gold leaf. Even when I work on paper, I tend to have gold leaf. It's authentic gold leaf so that it stays true throughout time. It won't tarnish. It can be white gold or the yellow gold, and there's a variety of shades. It's lovely material. And it's very much compatible with encaustic. It adheres very beautifully. A bit tricky to work with because you have to remember I have ventilation going on into the studio, and all of a sudden I have to work with these slithering, very light flakes of gold leaf. So sometimes I shut down the ventilation for a few seconds. I manage to apply the material and then bring the ventilation back when it's not compromising the adherence of the material. There it is. It's quite efficient. And then it doesn't need to be varnished or anything like that, which is another bonus in my point of view. Another very useful tool. Scratching, taking away the material is also very much part of my process. Addition and subtraction. And here you'll see how very versatile encaustic can be. I changed my mind, taking away the piece of paper and want to replace it with basically a very thin sheet of aluminum, and into which I've engraved some channels so that it will take some of the paint into it and increase its capacity to adhere to the surface. And it needs the heat definitely to confirm that it's solidly attached to the panel. The beauty of encaustic, over time it hardens. So at the very I know I've seen panels that were a few years older, and you cannot even scratch the surface. It's quite amazing, especially my paintings, because they're very thin. So that's a perspective of the finished work. And showing a more recent panel that I've done just a few months ago in that same series, a little bit more minimalistic. And that's another series that was also done in encaustic, more collage kind of an approach. We'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about this series in the PowerPoint. And that's the end of that little one. Stop the sharing. Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a repetition. If I know if some of you are handling, they know about encaustic. So that was a little bit more of a introductory kind of approach, but it gives you a sense of at least how I enjoy that painting medium. What else did I wanted to? Okay, keeping an eye on the time, we're doing good. Yes, well, let's go with the PowerPoint because that's the last portion where I really want to talk about how we engage our audiences. And that's really what had a big impact in my decisions of having a larger palette of techniques and approach. Basically, nowadays, what is the story I want to tell? What do I want to communicate? And that's how I decide how I'm going to do it. It can be a painting, but it can be something way more complex and requires even collaboration with other people, which I really enjoy. So I'm going to share my screen again. There. And we'll go into the full motion. Hopefully you don't, do everybody see the full screen? Yes, wonderful, excellent. Engaging an audience, engaging first with ourselves. I do want to say that for the longest time, I was missing the fact that I could not be in a studio every day. But at the moment, at the point where I was able to have the space attached to the house, even when I was still juggling 2 careers or leading a double life in the news environment and being an artist, I was able to walk into the space, and even if it was just for 15 minutes in the day, I thought it was crucial. So a daily art practice, I do believe that's the foundation of it. Someone said somewhere, I'm a blue collar kind of artist. I go to the studio 9 to 5, just in case inspiration walk by. So, and I think that's pretty much it. I think Picasso said something similar, that you have to be working in order to receive inspiration. And that's what I do every morning. I try to either have a drawing session with ink and brushes and things like that. But often also I will take older drawings that I've documented, and then I can do some doodles and develop marks and drawings on top with digital tools. And to give you a sense of what I mean by that. So you see me with the iPad on one image, because I can use it to solve composition, to figure out marks that I want to do with the real markers and paints and whatnot. But also it can be entirely developed within an application that's called Procreate on my iPad. My best friend. I really love that. So just to give you a sense of what it does. Once the entire exploration is completed, the program keeps in memory everything that you've done to a drawing. It's very useful to post as well. The other way to engage the audience is, I know that for myself, I made a decision that I really wanted to have my work in public spaces. Outside of the commercial adventure. And I was very lucky to be selected in 2016 to be part of a project that it lasted 2 years, and we were 7 of us in Saskatchewan, and we were selected to have a mentorship, and that the goal was to be showing in public spaces with the help of a curator. And the show that was that took shape at the end of this long adventure was called La Vie Fragile, because it was all of us were Francophone artists, and the catalog, sheer luck again, the AKA Artist Run Center in Saskatoon picked a work to be on top of for the cover of the catalog, and my work was selected. So I was really happy about that because I thought other works of my colleagues were really, really strong. And so, yeah. And the person who took us under his wing was Serge Murphy, who's an independent curator, but he's also an author, a well-regarded artist. He's very famous, actually, down east in Quebec. He has his work in museums, collections. So it was quite a privilege to have a conversation with him over a period of 2 years, where he visited our studios, and thanks to the technology, even if he's based in Montreal, we were able to have consistent conversation and have an opportunity to evolve and really, for me, it was a cornerstone of my career. This is the La Vie Fragile when we were able to bring the same show that was in Saskatoon to Montreal in Quebec, where we also had the opportunity to network, meet gallery owners, and really have a sense of the art scene down east. That experience was really, really important. And we see the collection that was chosen. This series is called, that's actually an installation. They're paintings, but the group is important. The way the group is presented, the motif of the grid is important. And it's called Innerscapes, État. And it's all about the landscape, but also how we feel when we look at the landscape. The other way of engaging is sometimes technology, and this project called Voix et Passages, Voices and Passages, happened it started in 2019. I submitted the project, got picked up by the curator, and it's again a collective experience. We've shown the work in Edmonton, smack in the middle of the pandemic. So it meant basically nobody saw the work, but fortunately they did a video of the exhibition. So it did have visibility that way. And it was, again, a very important milestone. What you see right now is the triptych, but it's got a very special way of interacting with the public because there's a soundtrack. I'll show you. First of all, the storyline is that it tells the story of 4 generations of women in my family who have been creative and sharing the values of what it is to be a woman, what it is to be creative, finding ways of expressing ourselves through the arts, and also composing with social constraint and expectations. So you see my grandmother on my father's side, there's my mom, there's me, the little kid, and my daughter, who's a professional actor. And for that installation, I was talking about the soundscape. So when people approached the work, it triggered 4 different soundscapes, and each one included a voice of the 4 of us, my mother being a writer, but she did interviews with me, and then her voice was telling her story that way. My daughter went into a studio and recorded an original piece about her experience with the collaboration between the four of us. And my grandmother, I had recorded her when I was 13 years old. And so basically I worked with archivals. We had to restore the tapes and find her voice, extract her voice, and then she came back to life basically through that project. And how was it possible is the entire sound system was hidden behind the main panel, the central panel. And I worked with a fantastic technologist, David Stanchuk, which was a very fruitful collaboration. He did the research for the parts. We found speakers that were thin enough, and the MP3 system and its program, because on the other side there's a motion sensor, so that when people approach the triptych, it triggers the soundtrack. And I should mention, my contribution to the work, beside beside painting and assembling everything, I did sing, because I do that once in a while. Oh, but I somehow okay. How many screens do you see right now? Do you see just one level? Okay, that's good. I was mentioning the project evolved during, well, it was shown in 2021. So it was developed right in the middle of the pandemic. That created some challenges. My mother was in Quebec and I could not travel to visit her. So thank God for Zoom, I was able to do the interview with her over that. And a television crew came also to document the experience, which was brought its own challenges, because they wanted to come 3 times, and the 3rd time they just had to cancel the shooting. And I ended up having to shoot my own by myself to document the last steps. But in the end, I was really grateful for the documentary. It's a 12-minute long piece. It's in French, but it's recognition to the importance of this project for the community, for the Francophone culture, and for myself. And that's the scale of the triptych when someone is standing beside it. And that's my last big project. It was on from March, the beginning of March to the very end of April of this year. And that's my other way of engaging people with this time a slide projection. And the way I wanted to activate this space is that people were proposed with various scenarios to enjoy the exhibition. And I was really thrilled to be able to put that together. So it was presented in an artist-run center, which is the Art Gallery of Regina. And this is the main corpus of the works on paper, which is, this is what the curator had seen while visiting my studio and why she invited me into the gallery. It's based on a found collection of abandoned travel pictures of someone I don't know at all. They're about 50 years old, these images. And I started to think about how we are trying to capture special moments during a travel, how we really want to document, and there's limitation to that, and the memory. It's a metaphor for how our memory works. So you see these actual pictures at various stages of intervention. And here's the same works that are derived from the original small images. What I've done is I digitalized everything, worked again through digital tools, and have a specialist print out one digital print, one original print, and I went back on him. I've added collages, gold leaf, markers, spray paint, but it's all very subtle. And it's one of the reasons why I've been presenting the work. This is one way of engaging people, is that they need to commit, approach the work, and really investigate and realize where the interventions are. And I love the fact that it's subtle that way. And that's a little video that will show you briefly, 30 seconds, how it works. It's one of the prints. There we go. So that shows you how I intervene on these unique prints. And that's the other section of the exhibition. Oh, I should mention that this was a duo show. So there was also a colleague from Winnipeg. She worked from found videos that she had selected throughout the pandemic. So it was a reflection on being an armchair kind of a traveler, and she had poems. So on my side of things, I was having my works on papers, and I had this slide projection. So the proposition was that people could stand around the projector, a vintage one, by the way, with real slides, and they could just stand or sit down, and it's a reference to these kind of evening that people would have at home in the 70s or so, to show the latest, the best images of their travels. And in the case of the exhibition, I suggested to people, okay, you can just sit down and enjoy the 140 slides that we're playing, or you could decide to interact with the projection, get in front of it and become part of the landscape, and also have a bit of an inkling of what the creative process is. And because all the images of the slides are relating to the works that were on the wall as well. And that's why I call the experience of interaction for the public becoming part of the landscape. So you see the setup here. And again, I worked with David Stanchuk for this project. So the same fellow came back. He's just brilliant. So you see the vintage Kodak projector. You see David looking at the motherboard because it needed to be programmed. Because again, people needed to approach the projector in order to trigger it. And then if you stayed close to it behind, the slides would play at every 8 seconds, which was a nice flow. But if you engage in front of the projection and wanted to be part of that, put on the white coat and become an element of the motif, then the projector switched program, and it would give you 55 seconds to benefit of the use of the image, and then take a picture that document your experience. So that was very complex to program and figure out, and kudos to David, who managed to have the patience with me to figure out ways of doing that. And this is just an example of how the work had evolved. This is a work from the collection that was hung on the wall. And this is 2 images in the carousel that were evolving as well. So I was telling the story from an original image and then again, there was blocks of 10 slides where there was a thread, and that's an example of a thread because I intervene again on the slides with a magnifier and twizzles and adding tapes and chemicals and scratching the surface and getting these effects. and having, after that, groups of visitors, again, interacting. The kids were fantastic. I had a class of 6th and 7th graders who were just they just wanted to be active with this projection. And we had all sorts of thread of conversation about photography, obsolete technology, explaining the projector, explaining what will happen to their own pictures and why do you take pictures. And so it was really ideal. That's what I mean by engaging an audience. And the cherry on the sundae was that another artist, a performer, and with her partner, Ian Campbell, this is Catherine Ricketts, proposed to respond to the exhibition. So we had 2 evenings of performances where our visuals, both from Sylvia's work and my work, were revisited through movement and sound and projection and another conversation going with the public. So I'm very grateful again for that collaboration that was coordinated with the curator as well. And I want to conclude this with another way of engaging, which is more into the line of contemplation. This is a project that I've been able to do because I went to a retreat into the Wanuskewin Park, Heritage Park in close to Saskatchewan. It's a land where humans have been active. Indigenous people mainly have been hunting and gathering and living thousands and thousands of years ago, and the buffaloes have been roaming. So a group of artists brought together by Bobby Clarkson Walker, who's with us today. We had the chance of walking the land, and this is the work that I've done for the collective show. And that's what I'm proposing to people. It's like documentation of almost like an archaeologist. It's just pinned to the wall without any frame, any intervention. And you need, again, to approach the work and really see that there are some collages and fine interventions, speaking of the layers of time and of the story of the place. And that's the conclusion of this PowerPoint. There we go. Thank you. And thank you, Bobby, for the chance of being part of that experience of the artist retreats and then having time to reflect and create something that was honoring that experience. Yeah. So this is the roundup, and this is just about time now that you have a chance to ask questions and have a chance to really dialogue.
And thank you so much. You know, it struck me that when you were talking, as artists, we all work in isolation and we don't really get a chance to see other people and their process. And this was a privilege to be invited into your world and to see your process. And I thought it was brilliant. So I thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording now.